Hi, my name is Troy Bauer. I am the dad of Canaan Bauer. Uh, Canaan is our 16-year-old local hero. He's known in our community of Las Cruces as our local hero. At 16 years old, he intervened in a kidnapping up at the Chucky's gas station in Doñana. Canaan had just competed in the state championship, wrestling championship. Canaan did a whole bunch of sports, and COVID had just begun. It was a real scary time for our country. We had never been exposed to anything like what was going on at that time. And school had been dismissed for a couple of weeks, and he was getting ready to head to some friend's house, and he went to the gas station to get something to drink, and noticed a commotion across the street, and saw what he thought was a dad or an uncle playing with their kids, kind of roughhousing out in the parking lot, until he seen a lady get knocked to the ground, and she had a baby strapped to her back, and it was evident that this was pretty serious. And so just running on instinct, he jumped in his truck and drove across the street real quick. And by the time he got there, the commotion had gone inside the gas station. And as he got out of his truck, everybody was running away and outside the gas station. They were effectively running away from this dangerous situation, leaving the mom and her children alone with this guy that was trying to kidnap her kids. And Canaan ran inside using his 6'4", 285 solid muscle pound frame, and he ran inside and quickly eliminated the threat, and held him for, I think it was about 9 minutes. They call it the longest pin in history, but he held the guy down for 9 minutes until the police arrived, and then he went on about his business. And it took hours for us to get a hold of him once we found out what was going on that day. And when we finally got a hold of Canaan, his response was, "Hey, I've got a whole bunch of missed calls. What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, son, you tell me." And he starts giving a rundown of things he had done that day, none of which included being this hero. And I finally got it out of him. I said, "Son, what happened at the gas station?" And he's like, That's what you're calling about? Man, Dad, that's no big deal. I was just, I ran inside. This lady needed some help, so I ran in and held the guy until the police showed up. And anyways, Dad, my friends are waiting on me, and I got to get going, so I'll talk to you when I get home." And hung up the phone, and I was just kind of in awe. Like, did that just really happen? Because this is a big deal. And so the story went viral. It was on video. There's surveillance footage, video, and it went viral. And gosh, that's been 5.5 years ago, and there's still rarely a day goes by that it's not talked about in some corner of the earth. There's been so many TV shows, news articles, the press. Fox News was in town recently. They're currently making a movie about it, and they actually have just earlier this year even released a book to preface the movie that's coming out, called The Peaceful Warrior, the Canaan Bauer story. It was just quite the story that needed to be told to give people hope. And there's so much drama and bad news out there that it's nice to have good news on occasion. And but what the most interesting piece of Canaan's story is, I think, is that when people found out, you have to understand, there was a big buzz around town in our community what had happened, regarding the kidnapping. I mean, it was a bloodbath, and people were talking about this very vicious, event that took place. And Canaan, at only 16 years old, was able to come across and eliminate the threat pretty quickly, and people were talking about it. But when they found out that it was Canaan, everyone from his classmates to his coaches, his friends, people in church, people in the community, everyone's saying, you know what, I'm no longer impressed now that I know that it's Canaan that did that, because that's who Canaan is every single day. Every single day, Canaan behaves that way. It wasn't for camera. It wasn't for show. And so over the last 5 years, we've heard so many stories, countless stories of things that Canaan had done leading up to that. And I tell people, you don't fall to the top of the mountain. It takes work, and it takes grit, and it takes determination, and it takes time to be ready to take that step. And Canaan was ready that day. You know, he didn't know when he got up that day that he was going to be facing a terrible situation. He didn't know that he was going to get into a fight. It wasn't much of a fight, but he didn't know that he was going to be facing what he was facing that day. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning, so his day was just getting started. But his body was prepared and his mind was prepared. You know, a lot of times your most popular kids, because Canaan was the most popular kid in school from the time he was little bitty, or from the time he was young. He was never really small. But he was always the most popular kid. And usually your popular kids have a reputation to uphold. And Canaan didn't care about his reputation. If somebody came to school in mismatched shoes and holes in their jeans and, you know, matted hair, easy targets for the bullies, Canaan defended them. He defended them because he was invested in people. He didn't care that it was the cool kid that was picking on this kid that nobody knows their name. He didn't care about that. He didn't care about your walk of life or where you came from or if your parents have money. He didn't care about that. But sadly and tragically and unfortunately, 2 years later, just about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile up the road from where I sit right here on this very road, a driver pulled out in front of Canaan when he was coming home that night. And Canaan took his last breath on this planet and took his first breath in heaven. Just that quick. And it leaves you stunned in that moment. Like, how is this possible? He's only 18 years old. You're riding this wave. You're on top of the world. Everything's going great. Celebrities are reaching out. He's got the world by the tail. You know, he's going places. He's big. There's not a lot of 6'4", 285 pounds of solid muscle people on this planet. He's young, he's healthy, he's got everything going for him. And that quick, it's taken away. And it leaves you wondering how. How? And in the coming days after the accident, people asked us, it's not fair. You know, how do you do it as parents? How are you able to move forward? Because, look, the world needed 5,000 more Canaans, 10,000 more Canaans. The only one that we have got taken away from us. And that's not fair. And they're right, it's not fair, but you know life is not fair. And you have to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward. And I don't have an answer as to how to do that, but I can tell you it's a choice that you have to make every single day. It doesn't come naturally, it doesn't come easy. I've had people ask me that are going through it. Maybe they are going through a nasty divorce or some sort of a trauma or challenge in their life, and they ask, how do you do it? How do you wear the smile, and how do you go through the day, every day in the spotlight? Because people know who we are. How do you go through this, go through the motions every day and not be angry at the world and not turn to drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever it is that they turn to? How do you do it? It's not easy. I don't know that I have an answer, except for every single day when I get out of bed, the first thing I do is I have to remind myself that really happened. That wasn't a dream. That wasn't a nightmare. That really happened. And then I have to make a choice. Am I going to let that define me? Am I going to stay in this bed and sulk all day? You know what? Nobody would blame me if I did. You're not supposed to bury your children first. Nobody would blame me if I couldn't get out of bed, if I couldn't function, if I turned to the bottle. Nobody would blame me. But it's not what Canaan would want. You know what? I raised Canaan. I raised Canaan to be the man that he turned into. And I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't follow his example. So every day is a decision to get up, put one foot in front of the other, and go out there and make a difference. Sure, there's days I screw up, I slip up. There's days I don't have it together, but none of us do, right? You can't be defined by that. You got to put one foot in front of the other and just try to make each day count. And so that's what we do. Grief is different for everybody, you know. Dad has lost a son, mom has lost a son, a brother has lost a brother, friends, aunts, uncles, cousins. We've all lost the same person, but we all have a different relationship with that person. And so the experience is different for each person. But speaking for myself, probably the hardest thing is that the world keeps going. The night of the accident, there were motorcycles doing 100 miles an hour right next to us, zipping up the road, where my son had just lost his life on a motorcycle doing 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, following the rules of the road, doing what he was supposed to be doing. He chose a safe route home, and it still wasn't enough. There's people that they just don't know. They have no idea what you're going through. And I feel like I've got this bubble above my head saying, I'm a grieving parent. This is what's happened to me. Don't you know? But that's not reality. People don't know. And I do think people would care if they knew, but a lot of people don't. But even if they do care, they can't comprehend the level of pain that you're going through. So it's a challenge that the world continues to move forward, and you want the world to move forward, but at the same time you want them to cater to your needs, because there's so many needs when you've lost a loved one. And I have coworkers, friends, neighbors, acquaintances that whether they mean to or not, they put an expiration date on your grief period. And there is no expiration date. Everyone grieves differently, but it never goes away. It'll never go away. It's always there. I tell people just because I carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. It's very heavy. I think I could make an argument that losing a child is just as life-altering as giving birth to a child. If you've ever been a parent, you know about the sleepless nights and the zapped energy throughout the day as you try to go to school or try to go to work or try to function throughout the day. Being a parent is tough. It's tough work. But it's worth it. You know, everybody wants to be or most people want to be a parent. It's worth it no matter how hard it is. But when you lose a child, in our case, we lost a child, and that's not to undermine people that have lost a spouse or a parent or a sibling. Those are tough. Those are tough. But losing a child goes against the natural order of things. You know, I got 3 days off of work. Well, I took more than that, but I was given 3 days off of work for losing a child. You know, we had not even planned the funeral yet in 3 days. When you give birth, most companies, a lot of companies at least, they give you maternity leave that might be several months to stay and care for your child. And it's understood that you need to take your kid to the doctor or the hospital, and there's situations that arise where you need to be at home with the kid. But when you lose a child, Nobody wants to talk about it. It's not this bundle of joy that you bring home. There's no celebration. There's no party. There's no, there's just no gatherings to sit and laugh and have a good time and share all these great, wonderful stories. It's a miserable time. And it's marking the end of a future that you've invested in. And I don't get to take my grief and hand it off to the grandparents or to the babysitter so I can get some sleep or get some rest or focus on my work. It's with me at all time. I can't give it to somebody else to take off my hands. It's always there. And as much as people say they're there for you and they want to talk about it, or they'll always be there to listen to you, they mean well. They do. But people don't really want to get that invested in it because it's heavy. And it's my trauma. It's not theirs. And they don't really have the words to offer. There's no comfort that you can offer when you lose a loved one. Being there, showing up matters. It does matter, and I don't want to undermine that. Showing up matters. But it eventually fades away and people stop showing up. People stop coming around. People stop calling, texting. But that grief is just as strong for me today, 3.5 years later, as it was the night of. I've noticed a lot of people talking on their cell phones or texting and or screwing with the stereo or looking at something and not paying attention to the road. People think they're good at multitasking, and they're not. They're not. They think they're good at it because it hasn't bit them in the butt yet. They haven't gotten into an accident. People aren't willing to honk their horn at them or yell at them when they get to a traffic light or something. And so these people skate through life thinking that they can multitask, that they can drive and do something else at the same time. But all it takes is that one time of not paying attention. You pull in front of a motorcycle, you pull in front of another vehicle. And so I've become more vocal in that, letting people know, hey, driving should be your number one task. You know, if I could tell you or our lawmakers anything, I would ask you to go to your private room, maybe an office, maybe go sit in the car. Go somewhere where there's no distractions, where it's quiet. Maybe do it late at night when everybody's in bed. But get out a piece of paper and a pencil and think of your loved one. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your kids. And write their obituary. Write their eulogy. Say all the things that you think you would say if you lose that loved one. Capture that on paper. And if you can do that and be unbothered by it, you probably shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car, because that'll change you. That'll change you. Because your actions behind the wheel can cause somebody like me to have to write an obituary for real and a eulogy for real. Because that loved one's not coming back. All because of your actions behind the road or behind the wheel. Not paying attention, screwing with the stereo. There's a whole number of things that can influence you. But there's hundreds of thousands, millions of Americans that are losing their lives on the road unnecessarily. And a lot of times it's because somebody's just distracted and there's no repercussions for their actions. And in our case, the driver that pulled in front of Canaan didn't even get a ticket for failure to yield. not even a slap on the wrist. We forgive her. We forgive her family. We've never heard from them. We forgive them. It's a reflection of them. And this is a reflection of us. Forgive people. Move on. But if people could just take the time to recognize how their actions could change other people, maybe they would care a little bit more.